In the states that had electronic voting, the numbers didn't match at all with the exit polling. But in states where they had paper, what do you know? The exit polls and the final results were almost perfect.
I have no doubt John Kerry won the election in Ohio.
Okay. Now, had John Kerry won the election in Ohio, John Kerry would be the president.
Sure. To say that those exit polls were so far off just didn't happen. Something else happened.
So the Yang folks,
right.
Feeney and the are sort of harassing Mavis?
Are getting DOT to harass Mavis.
Clint is fired at 10 in the morning. I'm fired at like 2:30 that afternoon.
Instead of investigating this company, instead of putting the brakes on what's going on, they're actually writing letters of recommendation for that company.
Correct.
Yang.
Correct.
And saying that you're removed.
Correct.
Tom Feeney's fingerprints are all over this thing?
Yes. Yes.
Literal fingerprints.
Literal fingerprints. I mean, read the public record. Read the public record. I don't want anyone to take my word for anything, Brad. Get the documents and read the record. And when you read a memo from Nelson Hill's secretary to him stating that Mr. Feeney wants this letter signed today, and this letter is a recommendation for Yang Enterprises, and the following day, after Mr. Hill executes this letter of recommendation, he is suddenly promoted to Deputy CIO for the State Technology Office.
Nelson Hill is promoted the
Yes.
day after he writes this letter.
The letter of recommendation for Yang Enterprises.
Had they had any problems with you prior to this investigation?
I believe in January of 2001, I received an outstanding evaluation that went into a lot of detail as to the value of my services to the department.
And how long had you been with the department?
I began with the department in 88.
88?
Yes.
So
I'd been with the department for...
Almost 15 years
yes,
at this point.
Yes. The department did an agency cleansing of any corporate knowledge concerning the problems with the Yang contract.
How many people were fired?
A half dozen other than Clint and myself.
So anybody who was involved with the Yang contract is now
Correct.
gone?
Correct.
In fact, on her, they tried to get her to sign a little paper saying she resigned.
Did she sign it?
She signed the resign one, and she kept to the one where it said you're fired. So when it went to court, when they said, well, she resigned voluntarily, we didn't do anything about it, she could produce a paper showing that they're just flat out lying.
She filed a whistleblower suit.
Yes.
And she won the case.
She won the case.
In 2004, the Florida Department of Transportation's audit of Yang Enterprises found $850,000 in questioned and qualified costs. Of that amount, Yang was asked to repay $132,000 pending further investigation. Hello, Phoenix. We've got a huge show for you today. Diebold whistleblower Stephen Heller, in his first live broadcast interview. Steve Heller had been working as a temp at Diebold's Los Angeles law firm, Jones Day, when he came across some disturbing memos.
I believe in my heart, even though I hadn't quite admitted it to myself, as soon as I saw them, those documents, I think I knew I was going to eventually release them.
Was it Diebold or Jones Day who went to court to try to stop the publication of those documents?
I believe it was their law firm that tried to stop the paper from publishing them, but the judge very wisely ruled that once it's been published, it's out there, and he's not going to force them to withdraw the publication.
Then there was a raid at your house, 7 a.m. in the morning, sometime after the release of this information.
They had a felony search warrant. They searched the house thoroughly, and they confiscated our computers, my wife's and my computers, our cell phones, my address book, other various papers, our scanner. They took a lot of stuff, but they didn't charge me at that time.
When were you then finally arrested and charged with these three felony counts?
I was charged in February of 2006.
You can't really talk about what those documents were that you printed out, right?
That's true, Brad. Those documents were attorney-client privilege information, and that's why I got arrested in the first place. And even now, if I were to talk about the content, I could be at risk of getting myself in trouble again.
All right. Can I talk about the content?
You can say anything you want.
I will.
All right.
Diebold was asking legal advice about having secretly installed uncertified software on voting machines to be used in the 2004 California election. It was a clear violation of the law.
Now, you have to understand, I grew up during Vietnam and Watergate, and my first thought was, I got to get these to the press, because the press is the fourth estate, the great watchdog. But then I realized, like I said a moment ago, no one in America in the press was covering this issue.
I started reading the leaked Diebold memos, which have been around everywhere on the internet. But at a certain point of time, I realized it has to live in America. I knew already that it's against the FEC rules. It should not be there. And I say, well, that would be a problem because this memory card is proprietary. I said, well, no, it's not. I have seen this guy before. And he actually went on immediately and wrote to Diebold and got in written response saying, this memory card is proprietary technology by Diebold. It's not available from anywhere else. So
Diebold told them in a letter that this was
I actually saw the letter. So I said, no. I have almost photographic memory. I know I have seen this guy before. Actually, it took me 2 weeks to figure out what the memory card was. And then it all of a sudden clicked. It's the Tandy old machine. The original first patent ever made about a laptop computer.
By Tandy?
Tandy. And this is the memory unit. It's an Epson memory card. That's from the patent I got the name, Epson memory card. Now I know who you are. So after I knew what it is, I spent $130. I got the reader.
Because of its design, the Diebold touchscreen machine proved vulnerable to a 20-year-old hack, the old bootloader hack.
There's nothing worse than bootloader hack. And honestly, I haven't seen these kind of things to happen in 20 years.
This you can do. You've confirmed this on the Diebold touchscreen TSX machine.
This is confirmed by me, and proof of concept was written by Princeton University, so you have independent verification for my finding.
In 2006, a Princeton University professor and 2 graduate students confirmed what Harry Hursty had already proven. They posted their demonstration on YouTube, hacking the Diebold touchscreen machine in less than 1 minute's time. They inserted a vote-flipping virus that changed vote tallies, would spread to other machines, and flip an election without leaving a trace.
You would hope that they didn't steal the last election, but, if they did, I guess the outcome would have been completely different if we had a different president. War in Iraq probably wouldn't have happened, most likely. That's the biggest impact, I think.
This is a national security issue.
That is correct. It's a national
Why
security
is it a
issue.
national security issue?
Of course, for the reason being that you actually decide for who are going to make the decisions for the future. I mean, everything to do with the votings are national security level issues in all the countries, not only in the U.S. One of the good election supervisors, his second in command, who was responsible in office for IT and security, came to me and said, I don't understand what you guys are doing. What is this big fuss about this, these machines can be hacked? Of course they can be hacked. We are not counting here real things like money.
According to a report in Rolling Stone magazine, Jack Abramoff's lobbying firm, Greenberg Traurig, was paid $275,000 by Diebold just before the passage of the Help America Vote Act, or HAVA, of 2002. Abramoff took the author of HAVA, Congressman Bob Ney, on a lavish golfing trip to Scotland. Both Abramoff and Ney have since been convicted of felonies relating to these matters and are currently serving time in prison. Bob Ney is a felon and currently can't vote in the state of Ohio. Yet we're stuck with his bill.
This whole mess began, or our latest chapter begins with this Help America Vote Act, $3.8 billion federal act, has now put these machines out all over the map with little or no oversight.
We have to fix this. Not for the U.S. sakes alone, while I love the United States of America, but also for the global sake, because otherwise this will just keep on spreading.
They're picking up our technology, the things that we're doing in our elections.
Actually, U.S. companies are trying to sell it very aggressively to the Europe and to a number of places where democracy hasn't been very strongly going. I mean, ESNS is selling to Hungary, ESNS is selling to England. Also, a number of the manufacturers are using different brand names when they sell their machines globally.
Isn't that at the heart of this privatization of our public election system?
I think so, and I think it's a horrible idea. I just can't understand why anyone would think that in the United States it's a good idea to let a private corporation run our elections for us in secret, using secret machines and secret software. That's insanity.
I think the last election was stolen, for sure. And now there's some question of those voting machines and who is the people that own them. They're owned by, supposedly, I heard, friends of Dick Cheney.
In an infamous fundraising letter to supporters in the summer of 2003, Diebold CEO Wally Odell promised to deliver Ohio's electoral votes to George W. Bush. Friendly gesture.
To simply assume that we don't steal votes in the United States is patently absurd.
In Mahoning County, where Youngstown is located, and this is verified by the Board of Elections themselves, 20 to 30 touchscreen voting machines recorded votes for candidates opposed to those selected by the voters, always jumping from Democrat to Republican. I can think of no other way this could have happened except this, that these touchscreen machines were programmed to default to candidate Bush. And if you did not override the default choice of that computer, you would be voting for Bush.
As for investigating the 2004 presidential election in Ohio, despite a court order, 56 out of 88 Ohio counties destroyed some or all of their ballots from that election.
It's like organized crime. I mean, right? Organized crime, people, when they don't understand organized crime doesn't go out and steal $1 million. What they steal is they steal a little every day. And I think that's what the Republicans understand, is that if you don't get too greedy and you steal some votes in Warren County, you steal some votes in Claremont County, you have some computer glitch problem here and there, suddenly you've got your votes. That's why you have to have checks and balances. You have to have full transparency.
Key thing here is, if we want to immediately increase the level of security, you will start by releasing these absentee ballots. Because in state of California on average, in basically every county, 30% of the voters are absentees. You have very solid evidence if the rest of the bunch doesn't fall in the same line.
You're saying release those things already right now. We're already scanning them with the optical scanners that have the image. Release those images.
And since this doesn't really need more new legislation, you can start doing it right now.
How would one keep this from happening? The ability to steal an election?
Non-proprietary source code.
Right.
Non-proprietary hardware, because you can hide it in the hardware. Random checks.
In my mind, silver bullet means a solution where you don't have to trust anyone. You can verify that the vote you cast was recorded accurately. You can verify that your vote was counted. And you can verify that your vote was part of the total. So you can access every single turning point, every single process point of the election process and see that my vote is going through there.
So if we have to count the paper to be absolutely sure about the machine count anyway, then what do we need the machines for in the first place?
It's a tool. It's not a god, it's a tool. Now that I'm fired, I apply for jobs, Programmer. Been at NASA, worked with ExxonMobil, worked with DOT, can't find a job anywhere. I end up stocking shelves at the dollar store. So,
really?
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm thinking I'm not getting a real good recommendation from Yang and DOT.
So now you're working at the dollar store.
Working at the dollar store, stocking shelves. And Lemmy shows up.
Raymond Lemmy.
Just comes in sometime, and he's staring at me over the top of these little, potato chip type holders. I walked over and said, "Can I help you?" And he said, "No, I'm just shopping." And he leaves.
Okay.
And then he comes in again, tells me that he's been working on the case on the side.
He's looking into this on his own now?
On his own.
For fun?
I don't know.
Why? What's he going to do with this information if he's not doing it?
I guess if he gets enough of it, he thinks he can pop it somewhere. I don't know. So he keeps coming in and asking me questions about boat rigging and spies, and I don't know necessarily what he wants, so I just answer whatever he asks. This was a big case that he was making headway on. It wasn't an official case, because officially DOT was going to do nothing, because Feeney wouldn't let him do anything. So I give him information, but he didn't give a lot back.
Clint indicated to me that Ray Lemmy had told him that it was much bigger, that what he was investigating was much bigger and went higher.
Clint said this to you?
Yes, Clint said that to me.
When he said all the way to the top, who did you think he was? Who was the top?
I was thinking Bush. I didn't know whether it was just Jeb Bush or whether it went farther than that. From Feeney's conversations, he thought he was right with Bush.
Feeney said that he was
Yes.
right with Bush.
Right. Both George and Jeb, so.
Lemmy says to you, this corruption goes all the way to the top.
Right. And all I have to do is wait a couple weeks and I'll be thrilled with the results.
So you waited a couple weeks.
And he turned up dead in a Georgia motel room.
What he was investigating was much bigger.
When he said all the way to the top, who did you think he was?
I was thinking Bush. My first thought was they killed him.
How did you feel about that?
Guilty.
You felt guilty?
Yeah. If I hadn't brought it to him, then he wouldn't have gotten involved.
What was
They
the
don't
cause
have-
of death?
They said suicide, but they don't do autopsies in Georgia.
Did
If he died in Florida, it's an automatic autopsy.
You mean if a suicide occurred in Florida, it would be an automatic autopsy?
Automatic
But
autopsy.
a suicide in Georgia, not mandatory?
Not mandatory.
It would have had to have occurred had he been killed in... Not been killed.
Well, my speculation is he offended somebody and he got killed.
You feel he got killed?
Yes. Because the hotel he was at is this real secluded, tree lines on both sides. It's a little shabby $23 a night hotel. If you wanted to kill yourself, why not stop somewhere in Florida?
He was working out of Tallahassee, Florida,
He was
right?
working out of Tallahassee. So
You were in Tallahassee at the
Right.
time. Then there's Valdosta, which is just...
hour and a half away.
Hour and a half away. It's sort of a border town in Georgia?
Yeah, it's up a ways. There are a lot of hotels he could have stopped at Georgia prior to getting to Valdosta. The whole thing's just wrong. There's a report that he called into DOT at 6:45 in the morning, and yet they have him killing himself 38 minutes later, even though it's another hour to get to Valdosta. Supposedly he's in the motel room one night,
Right.
but there's 2 receipts.
In the police report, it says one is a check-in receipt, the other is a check-out receipt.
If he killed himself, he didn't check out.
Well, have you not checked into a motel room where they charge you up front? In other words, they check you in and check you out at the same time?
On different days? I don't think they do that.
Yeah, there's another problem with that. The first receipt is dated June 29, 2003. He was in Tallahassee June 29, 2003. He didn't kiss his wife goodbye, as she says, until June 30th, 2003, 6:15 a.m.
Who's in the room on June 29th? In the hotel room, they found a blank, what is that, legal pad?
Okay.
And an empty file folder. And
Right.
every time he'd come talk to me, he'd have his little yellow pad and his little file folder full of papers.
Are you suggesting that,
The papers are gone? Yes.
and you're suggesting that somebody took those papers?
Would you take a legal pad and a manila folder to a suicide?
Maybe he wanted to have a write a suicide note.
I don't know. The note's weird, too, because he didn't talk about his daughter. And the daughter was just about to be married.
He mentioned his wife
Right.
by name. He has one child, a daughter.
Daughter.
He does not mention her.
Does not mention her. But every time we talked at the dollar store, part of the conversation was, how's your daughter? She's doing good. She's getting married,
Doesn't mention her in his suicide note. Mentions his wife. Did he sign his suicide note?
Didn't sign it. He put a time on it.
The police say they took photographs, but due to a failure in the camera's flash memory, there would be no photographs.
Right.
We've recently seen that there are, in fact, photographs
That conflict the police report.
that do conflict the police report.
The Valdosta police report alleged there was no blood on the towel and no visible trauma to the body. The photographs of Raymond Lemmy seem to suggest otherwise.
And Valdosta police have confirmed that these photographs are real, and that due to interest on the internet in December of 2004, they reopened the case of Raymond Lemmy. Also around that time, they spoke with someone at the Florida Department of Transportation, and that they closed the case shortly thereafter. Now, they won't tell me who it is they talked to at the Florida Department of Transportation. They told me over and over and over that they were not stonewalling me. And then they didn't call me back ever again. And remember, they're in Valdosta, Georgia. So what the hell does the Florida Department of Transportation have to do with an investigation that they're doing at a Georgia police department? So the fact that a call from someone at FDOT would lead to shutting down the investigation in Georgia, you know, I don't know if there's anything sinister there or not, but it sure doesn't smell right.
6 weeks after Lemmy died, Tom Feeney went golfing at St. Andrews in Scotland. He was the special guest of super lobbyist Jack Abramoff.
After Lemmy turned up dead and things were not moving along very well, I went ahead and wrote a book and put it out there. I hadn't even published the book, and I get this email that it says something about, like, they know about the book, you know, don't be alone.
Are you worried about somebody taking your life?
If it's wrong, you have to do the right thing, no matter what it costs.
Aren't you just doing this to sell books? Making these outrageous claims?
No longer outrageous. Most of it's already been proven now.
Well, nonetheless,
in fact,
though,
I think you found most of the proof.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
when this story broke publicly, did the media break down your door to try to figure out what the hell was going on here?
In reference to the voting, you're the only person who may have contacted me.
CNN never called?
No.
AP?
No.
60 Minutes?
No.
Major mainstream media has not touched this affidavit story, which is at the heart of what we're looking at here.
I assume they're afraid. I mean, they did it Dan Rather. That's pretty impressive. So, you know, how safe do you feel compared to Dan Rather?
This thing matters, and I don't care which side of the political spectrum you're on. I say frequently when I speak, this is not about left and right. This is about right and wrong. If we can't have confidence in our democracy, in America, in the world's greatest democracy, if we can't have confidence, and I mean both the winners and the losers, then what kind of example are we setting for the rest of the world? Why the hell are we sending people out all around the world to fight and die to presumably spread democracy if we don't even have it here?
We have become numb to unethical behavior. Our lives are very difficult. We're clinging on to our middle class by our fingernails.
We who?
The American people. When you have that 5 minutes that you can be home and close the door and have some peace, it's very, very difficult to say, look what they're doing to my vote.
You're at the center of a very explosive story where people have died. Don't know if it was murder. Don't know if it was suicide.
Probably wasn't suicide.
If it wasn't suicide. That's not funny.
No.
I've never had this feeling before that there's no place to turn. Normally you had the media. You'd go to the press. The press would become furious, at least parts of it, enough of it. Or you go to your congressman. But nobody seems to care.
Approximately 80% of the votes in the United States of America are counted by Diebold or ES&S. In his continuing effort to demand accountability and to publicize his story, Clint Curtis ran for Congress against Tom Feeney in 2006. Feeney refused to debate Curtis and outspent him by a factor of 26-1. Theirs was one of 4 congressional races in Florida that were contested in 2006, prompting Florida's new Republican governor and the Republican legislature to mandate that they would vote on paper ballots in the 2008 election, where Curtis will run again against Tom Feeney. Mavis Georgalis spent years in the courts fighting both the Yangs and FDOT. Ultimately, she was reinstated with full back pay and awarded a large settlement from the Florida Department of Transportation.
In August 2007, Diebold changed its name to Premier Election Solutions, Inc. I think what Clint Curtis is really an object lesson in what can go wrong and how easily it can go wrong. In fact, we don't know if his software and his code was ever used in any voting software. But the fact that we're not able to look at the software that is used to count our votes, this secret software that is used to count votes in America, the world's greatest democracy, is frankly a scandal. And we all should be very concerned about that.
Let Satan blow it out. I'm gonna let it shine. Won't let Satan blow it out. I'm gonna let it shine. Won't let Satan blow it out.